I would like to thank Cité de l'Architecture et du Patrimoine on behalf of President Fondatrice of Global Award, Jana Revedin, for the opportunity to present another Amazonia from a perspective of Severiano Porto's architecture. In confusing times, Amazonia is at the heart of the climate change debate. The recognition of Porto is crucial to an awareness of Amazonian society and could motivate younger architects to find their true role in the service of a region that is both the lung of the world and the home to 25 million people in Brazilian Amazonia. Talk about Amazonia and its importance for a global world is a need. Talk about architecture in Amazonia is important too. I'd like to thank Diretrice do Développement Culturel, Marie-Hélène Contal, for the kindness and interest in America's architecture in the 2021 Global Award of Sustainable Architecture, with awarded architects from Brazil, Chile, Paraguay, and the United States. Our physical distance from Europe is overcome by the cultural transfers with architectures that bring borders closer and allow us to believe in a fairer and better world we live in. Severiano Porto graduated from the Faculdade Nacional de Arquitetura in Rio de Janeiro in 1954. He worked for a construction company in Rio for 11 years as an assistant and later as an architect responsible for developing projects and constructions. That's when recognized the importance of the construction site. At the beginning, he carried out significant works in Rio, which was still Brazil's capital at the time. In 1965, he established a partnership with architect Mário Emílio Ribeiro and moved from Rio de Janeiro to a changing Manaus, about 4,300 kilometers west from his environment. It was then a period of economic euphoria with the creation of Manaus Free Trade Zone. However, after choosing Manaus, his vision was transformed by the geographical isolation and logistic limitations that became opportunities for new experience and learning. Severiano Porto is one of Brazil's leading architects and a pioneer of sustainable architecture, an experimentalist with an awareness of local cultures and a varied repertoire recognized as the Amazonia architect. He was one of the first in Latin America to resist the general industrialization of construction by maintaining wisdom and local techniques that value local labor. The difficulties and limitations in carrying out projects and constructions in the middle of Amazonia made Severiano Porto look at the place and take advantage of the existing and unknown wealth, and potential of the Brazilian Cultural Center. It is necessary to consider the natural and existing resources in the rainforest used by forest peoples. Rubber boosted Amazonia economy with the Industrial Revolution and modernized cities in the middle of the rainforest, such as Manaus, from 1850 onwards. The construction of Amazonas Theatre is a landmark of that period. On the other hand, society denied its constructive and cultural tradition, with materials considered wild, such as wood and straw in downtown area. With the outbreak of World War I, the rubber economy in Amazonia collapsed and rubber plantation workers moved to Manaus and built Cidade Flutuante, the floating city, made of wood and straw in front of the city. Chabonos and malocas are part of contemporary architecture in Amazonia. They continue to be built. Severiano Porto learned from Yanomamis a macro coverage like a shelter, circular plan, and able to choose materials from the land and transfer this ancient wisdom to a formal language. The Amazonas Hotel is a project by architect Paulo Antunes Ribeiro in Manaus and was the first building in the Amazonia to be published in L'Architecture d'aujourd'hui in 1952. Due to the quality of the proposal, the internal ambience of the apartments and the gardens by Roberto Burle Marx. The archives of these projects are at l'Institut Français d'Architecture. The building is in reinforced concrete and has Le Corbusier principles that allow the architecture of Escola Carioca. Oswaldo Bratsky carried out in Amapá State outstanding projects of Vila Serra do Navio and Vila Amazonas. They were inaugurated in 1960 before Brasilia Federal Capital for extraction of manganese ore in Amazonia. The village houses did not use glass due to logistical difficulties. They were screened. Bratsky was a member of Escola Paulista and used industrial tiles with permanent ventilation systems. Amazonia is modern. In such polarized world, Severiano Porto teaches us to deal with difference to carry out projects and understand that it is possible to conciliate the environment and industrialization by finding contemporary architectural solutions with quality. Porto used this reference to develop its architecture in Amazonia without prejudice and with inclusion. The Vivaldo Lima Stadium was a milestone of developmentalism in Amazonia, as the main reinforced concrete construction to date in the region. It was embedded in the land and eliminated a large span of reinforced concrete bleachers with the simple support of these on the slopes. Severiano Porto verifies the problems that occurred in the construction of Brazilian stadiums. By the end of the construction, the resources were scarce, which determined the cutoff of finishes and facades were unfinished. The strategy of reducing the facades to suit the topography is rational and economic and supports the architect's design decisions. As a result, the building is low-rise and integrated into its immediate surroundings. The stadium had a capacity of 48,000 spectators. Porto made Cafundó House for his family in Manaus on a rented site in the suburb. He distributed a wooden pavilion with a sawmill treatment on pilotis for social and intimate activities and the other areas in bricks for support activities. There was no glass in the frames, just movable cedar wood boards. Cafundó House was a manifesto against the government decision not to use this material for buildings in Manaus and reduced costs of construction 25% compared to brick buildings at the time. Straw Hut Restaurant was a first building award first prize in 1967. Porto's experience on the building site makes it possible to learn from the carpenters about new construction details, new ways of fitting wooden pieces, fixing straw on the structure, and treating wood as a material that should be incorporated into the site, as if it were still part of the rainforest. The choice for a pure geometry and circular plan was made by wide possibility to adapt it to site. The carpenters present other simple and effective solutions for the construction that I've discussed with Porto. The wooden pillars formed a conical shape and covered with busu straw used by indigenous in their malocas and chabonas. The space division was traditional with bricks. The low budget defined choice of materials and construction techniques. By that time, Acariquara wood was used as power energy poles in Manaus. The use of Acariquara wood without treatment and with simple fixation, as the carpenters were used to working in naval carpentry. Porto's second house in Manaus was featured by simplicity, instruction, and wood treatment with complexity in architectural composition. The trees were cut for construction in a location close to the site without industrial treatment. In order to avoid shear between the pieces' joints, wider sections were used compared to commercial ones. Such dimensions matched the concrete structure. The plan presents a simple geometry with a compositional complexity in the configuration of the building parts. The sectorization of the ground floor is conservative, with the separation of the service part in bricks and the social part in wood. On the second floor is the intimate part, with the studio and two small suites. All spaces are cross-ventilated and facing the Amazonian atrium, making a visual integration with the social area. The Amazonian atrium was the core of the house and presented contrast between open and closed, covered and open, light and dark, natural and artificial, handmade and industrial. The wall's porosity was diverse, which allowed constant cross-ventilation with different luminosities. Pillars made of Massaranduba wood with yellow glass gelosias and concrete cobogós framed the garden of Amazonian atrium. SUFRAMA is an independent federal agency that represents Manaus Free Trade Zone. It is a symbolic milestone of the beginning of industrialization in Amazonia in 1967. The government hired Porto for a wooden building that would represent Amazonia. Porto stated that SUFRAMA would have difficulties to maintain a public building in this scale in wood, so he built it in reinforced concrete. The proposal is structuralist, similar to production industries. Porto proposed a homogeneity between the admin functions in his project without formal distinction in functional hierarchy. SUFRAMA's modules are 15 by 15 meters and are like tents with 4 pillars. The modules cover has curved and arched slabs and reinforced concrete with a dome at the top. They are orthogonally juxtaposed, which allow a plan with depth without causing damage to lighting and ventilation. Robert Schuster's Weekend House is located in Igarapé do Mariano in Manaus. He requested a house with a total environmental interaction. Beneath the forest canopy, the pillars of this jungle house help it to merge with the tree trunks. Its regular geometry is determined by a rigid timber grid that is adapted to the topography and delicately touches the unpaved ground in the form of pilotis. The structural mesh is 2.5 meters by 2.5 meters. Schuster's house is located on the highest part of the site. The land contains 30-meter high trees. The vegetation that protects the house from the sun is a threat to possible falling branches. Porto safeguards the permeability of the soil, the leafy ground, and verticalize the setting, in contrast with the traditional typology of riverside Amazonian houses. This condition requires a robust house structure. The wood comes from a range of species and it is treated by the carpenters working on site. Nothing comes from the sawmill and edges are smoothed with a chainsaw. The roof of cavaco, wood chip tiles, protects the building from weather. This innovative solution was unusual in the context of Brazilian architecture in the 70s, but is common amongst the riverside dwellers of Amazonia. Porto did a project for an inn with 14 rooms in Silves, Amazonas state. The plan has a simple geometry, but the internal garden is decentralized, which makes it more complex. This eccentricity is also featured by an asymmetrical roof. The unglazed windows have screens and adjustable shutters for cross ventilations. The rooms are arranged like cells, while the common areas have a rigid concentric free plan. The Silves Inn is located on an island in Lake Canaçari, 200 kilometers from Manaus. The hostel consists of a small group of buildings in the southwest of the island. To the east, at the entrance to the town, Porto designed a farm to supply both the hostel and the city. The covers, finishes, and support structure are in wood, while some of the walls and wet areas with bricks and painted in white. The cavaco is used again by Porto in an 1,000 square meter building. Silves Inn is a milestone in the integration of the site proposed by Lúcio Costa in Brazilian modern architecture and used by Severiano Porto in Amazonia. The treatment of the pillars and beams was rudimentary, whilst the timber used in the furniture was more refined. The structural system is innovative for a timber building of this size. The pillars connected two beams that support reinforced concrete slab in the bathrooms. The campus of Universidade Federal do Amazonas covers an area of 600 hectares of forest in the heart of the urban area of Manaus. Severiano Porto projected a northern sector in an area of 500 by 500 meters. Severiano Porto distributed the elements over a raised plateau, with a road and parking lots surrounding the area. Porto experienced progressive concepts such as structuralist, metabolist, continuous growth, and utopian seed concepts in his design for a university that can be constantly expanded in line with changing needs. This principle has allowed the university to continue expanding to this day. The building is light and very inexpensive. It's structured by reinforced concrete with light and movable industrial panels. The roof uses laminated steel profiles and industrial tiles. Porto's strategies include a range of solutions of cross-ventilation, roof-level ventilation, flexible plans, wide overhangs that offer protection against the rainwater collection as a means of preventing soil erosion, and a modular construction that is adapted to the topography. In admin blocks, the program is verticalized on 2 floors and maintains cross ventilations between and over the envelopes. In the classroom blocks, the macro coverage solution provides an alternative for weather protection of the construction site and guarantees execution of work budget in the financial year. Ventilation in classroom also occurs through exhaust with openings in the upper slab, and they are enhanced by the roof vent in the macro coverage with metal plates to conduct the heat from the inside the classroom to the attic. The social areas are sheltered with a macro coverage. The campus of Universidade Federal do Amazonas continues to expand by following Severiano Porto's project 50 years ago, and it has one of the lowest maintenance costs in Brazilian universities. Company Town of Baubina was built to house workers for construction and operation of hydroelectric plant in Amazonas state. Baubina's hydroelectric plant has changed the geography of Amazonia in 80s and flooded an area of 3,119 square kilometers. And it is considered one of the worst environmental disasters in Brazil. In addition to the environmental disaster, it flooded the lands of the Waimeria Troari and caused its population to be almost wiped away. Company Town of Baubina was built by the construction company Andrade Gutierrez and divided in 2 sectors. The brick house for the employees, the operation are to the left of the main road, and the wooden house for the workers involved in the construction of the power plant. Baubina Environmental Protection Center is in a strategic position at the entrance to the village on the side of the wooden buildings. To study this environmental disaster, the government was forced by the justice to build a research center and use thousands of trees that were getting rot in the flooded lake. Severiano Porto was hired for his experience in large-scale works with wood in Amazonia. The site has a slight slope, and the project is structured in 2 converging wings. Along the streets are labs, while more collected accommodation for researchers. Baubina Environmental Protection Center is monumental and iconic. The previous experience with Cavaco tiles started at Schuster's house and at Silvia's Inn elevated to another degree of complexity in a 6,000 square meter building. The freedom of shape is not restricted to form, but at the different heights of the roof ridge that generate variable spaces that go up or down according to the program. This blend between the industrial and the artisanal took shape with the help of cranes that combined with Shaw to build the architect's masterpiece. The forest of pillars marks the monumental structure, in which research labs are grouped below a large roof and distributed along snaking walkways. The cavacos macro coverage follows the winding plan, its varying height determined by a ridge that rises and falls along the length of the building. For the first time, Porto's wooden building would be built by another construction company, use the major infrastructure works in reinforced concrete. Porto invites his naval carpenter, Elias Imbiriba, and along with the construction company, they set up a workshop to train local labor in wood treatment and construction. The construction site with cranes and naval carpenters in harmony shows a construction utopia of a fantastic architecture. The union of craftwork and industrial knowledge takes place in Baubina. Baubina is the masterpiece of Brazilian modern architecture in Amazonia. This brief presentation of Severiano Porto's trajectory in Amazonia is a rescue of one of the main environmental references in the Americas and qualifies him for the 2021 Global Award of Sustainable Architecture. Porto's architecture expresses a palette of gradations from rusticity to refinement on the same work. It teaches us that labeling an architectural production with a materiality, a development model, or the production of mean is an unnecessary simplification given the complexity observed in the architect's works. The architecture produced in his offices is not raw or cooked, handcrafted or industrial, environmental or developmental. It's just what it should be. The recognition of the Cité de l'Architecture et du Patrimoine provide excellent prospects for maturation and inclusion for architecture in the 21st century. Porto's wooden works are being lost in Amazonia due to a lack of maintenance that is a consequence of both environmental legislation and the loss of the essential skilled labor to other more profitable activities. Nama has a great opportunity with Porto's archives custody to continue his legacy in Amazonia with a formation of new architects and maintaining our reconstruction his wood building. That way, we will be able to document and train future construction workers and keep the constructive tradition alive. The construction of an architecture that dialogues with the artisanal and industrial is intensified by Severiano Porto with the variety of textures and the materialities used. The caboclo's labor is used for a mass production with natural materials, just as the industrialized product is customized in harmonious relationship of materials and construction techniques. In the craftsmanship in naval construction carried out in Amazonia performs recreational boats with wood from the forest, It also qualifies and performs in the large shipyards in Manaus the construction of towboats, ferries, and yachts with a millimetric precision required by the metal-using industry. In Severiano Porto's architecture, the relationships between the inshore and the turnstile show an architecture adapted to the environment, not only due to the climate, but also to the belonging to what makes it distinct and original. Porto is not vernacular, he is scholarly. Thank you very much.